We are going to take a look at how to start using lock. We've been using iLock. We will move on to using lock. So I'll just say using .lock. And so we will be using, it's just label based. So it's no more index based, it's label based. But before we move on, I would just like to change the name of what we are using. I'll just say dflock as the new name, and I will make a copy of a data set which is df Titanic, so that we don't get to mess up our original data source. So at times you need to just make a copy to preserve your data. Now if I simply do df, if I run it, you will see what's there. However, anyway, let me just run it. I'll print it. I'll say head. I'll just print 2. Now, if you take a look, you see you always have this index which starts from 0. I want to replace this and use the passenger ID as the index. So this should become the index. How do I go about doing that? We've been used to the fact that you always do something and say equal before you perform a change. Now I want us to do it without doing that. So dflock, I want to implement a certain change. I basically want to change the index. So I'll say .set index. So I'm going to use the set index function to be able to change it. So here you simply present what you want to use to change the index. Now, before we go on, I'll just use columns here so that we make sure we are using the right names. So we want to use the passenger ID for what we will do. So I do that so that I copy the correct thing. I don't have to come here and try to imagine what is what. So dflock dot set index. Put it there. I'll paste it there. And then I just have to tell it that. So if you do this, if you just run it like this, it will change the index immediately. However, so let me show you something. So if you do that, you can see that this has now become the index. However, it has not kept it, because if you do dflock dot head, let me say true, you can see that you still have this thing here. However, if you come here and in between, and here you just say set, well, you simply say in place true, then it's going to maintain it. Now, why is it happening like that? Because you've not created any new variable. So in case you don't want to create any new variable and you just want it to store whatever change you bring, you always put in place true. So if I run this now, we are going to have something like, where we have set in place true. If we run this, let's see what we have. Now you now have the passenger ID as the index, and it has kept it. Let's now use dflock, knowing that this is a new index. We've set the index. So now we are going to run it in a way that is similar to what we did for the iLock. Now, the difference is that you have to use the label that is here. Now, here we have the label. We have these numbers which have been used. There may be times when it's actually a string data type that has been used. For example, the names or the names of cities and so on. Then you will use it. But in this case, we have numbers. Whatever the case, it's always going to be the same thing you will be doing. So let's say we want to extract just this row, the row having the ID 1. So what you simply do is dflock, and of course we will use the square bracket. Now in case it had, let's say, yeah, it's dflock, you always have to say dot lock, then it knows you want to go for rows. Okay, if it were text, we will use that. Now that it's not text, we'll just put 1 and let's run it. And there we go. So it has extracted all the information. You see the P class name, everything. You see all the columns, but you see it's just for that one particular row. What if we want to take a look at more than one row? It's going to be very similar. .log, and then in this case, we are simply going to, let's say 2, 4, 6. Okay, let's run it. Now it has an error. I'll explain why we have that error, and we'll see how to solve it. Remember in the previous one, I had told you if you put it like this, you generally need to put a second square bracket because you are using more than one. So if we throw in the second square bracket, let me come back. If we throw in a second square bracket, let's run it and see what happens. There you go. However, these are the rows we've chosen. We chose it using the label that is there. It's not based on index, it's based on label. However, if we want to use the index, we simply need to use ilog, and then remember that the index generally starts from 0. So if you want the second thing, then you should put 3 here, and so on and so forth. Well, this is this, yeah. So it should actually be 1 because it starts from 0. Okay. Now, what happens if we want to slice? So what I was just explaining is, in case you want to use ilog and obtain the same effect, when you're putting in your numbers, keep in mind that the index starts from 0. So you can adjust it to obtain the same thing. But if you want to use log, whatever label is there, put it there, it's going to extract it. Now, what if we want to slice it? We will simply do dflog .log, and here we will put the start and the end. So let's say I want to start from 1 to 4. If I run it, this is what we have. However, we can adjust it. It's important, these mistakes are important for you to read and see why we have the mistakes. Then it helps to correct it when you understand why you have it. Now, this is just there to let you know you've made a mistake. You should use a column here if you want to slice it. If you want to go from 1 to 4, just do that. And when you run it, it's going to go. You can see you've gone from 1 to 4. Now, let's say you want to take a look at the first 5. So I'll say dflog.log, and if we do something like that, colon square bracket, if we do something like that, 5, let's run it and see we have the first 5. Now remember, if we do dflog.shape, it gives us an idea of the size. So in this case, we can also do dflog.log, and we can do minus, let me just say 888, and then it should give us the last numbers from 888 all the way to the end. And if you just want the last one, dflog.log -1, as we saw the other time. Now, if you put -1, in this case, you'll see it doesn't work. So the adjustment we have to do to it is, so this is great so that we remember you cannot use this because we are not running indexes. We are running the labels. So when you use log, it must be the exact label. So you will not do -1. You will look at the shape, see what is. So we run the shape, whatever you have here, that is what you'll put here. So you'll, if you have 889, 891, 891, if you run it, then you'll get the last value. So always keep in mind, lock is using the label of the index. Meanwhile, iLock is using just the index number. That's the main difference between it. Now we want to take a look how to combine rows and columns. So if you want to extract your rows and columns, how do you go about doing that? We are going to use iLock because we will be using the numbers. So if you want to extract, let's say, the first to the third row, or the first to the second, or the first to the fourth row, and maybe the first to the fifth column, then how do you go about doing that? So we'll use dflock dot ilock, and then let's say we want to do from 0. Remember, 0 is the first row, so it's always row to column. So first to fourth, and then I'll put a comma and I'll put the columns. Now let's say I want to do from 0 to the third. Okay, why third? Because everything starts from 0. Now if you remember the columns, this you can see how it's arranged. So we expect to have survived, P, class, and name. We expect to have them, and let's run that. Okay, the thing with this is it's exclusive. Remember, when you put it for the columns, here we have 0, 1, 2 is exclusive. Here we have 0, 1, 2, 3 is exclusive. So that's the thing to keep in mind. Well, the right word is excluded. It's not included in it. Now, what if we do not just want a range of rows and a range of columns? What if we want to go in and pick very specific rows and very specific columns? How do we go about doing that? So we will just use a list or a series of those rows, or I'll say a list of those rows and a list of those columns. So dflock dot ilock, dflock.ilock, and this time you'll use that. So let's say I want to take 2, 4, 6, and for the columns I now want to go, let's say 2, 4, 6, 2. Let's say I want to run that, and all I need to do is to run this command, and here we go, name h patch. Okay, this seems to, let's put 5 here and see what's with 5. Zip. Let me come to this data. This is 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Let's try 7, actually 8. So we have fair. So that's it. You can choose very specific rows and columns by doing that. Now we can do exactly the same thing using lock. With lock, we will not be using the index. We will not be counting things, but we will use the label that is there. So if I have, for example, df.lock, and I want, so remember here, this is the label. It's not really the index, it's the label. Let's say I want to extract this particular label. So I'll just say, okay, let me do 2, 4, 6. So the label of the index, which is 2, 4, 6, whatever corresponds to that level, it's going to pull it out. And now I need to precisely give the name of the column. So let me say, for example, name, age, and fair. If I run it, there we go. We have name, age, fair. And it appears in that order, and it's for this particular label of ID.